Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to do this. If you don't know me, this is the chance for us to actually get to know each other. It's a little bit, I'll be on the video, you'll be in the chat, but we can still have a great conversation. So I want to say thank you to everybody that joined me. I'm Michelle Hayward, founder of Positive Hire, civil engineer, and I wanted to do what I'm calling a series of lives, live streams called Built by Women. And I thought I would start with myself. Really? All right, y'all, hold on. I'm having an issue over on LinkedIn. Um, so just to be fair to everybody over there, I need to figure out what they did or didn't do. We'll start soon. That's fine, but I don't know what they did. Looks like the event was canceled on LinkedIn. You'll need to create a new broadcast or just remove this destination and then re-add it. Okay, so I'm going to remove LinkedIn as a destination. We're going to see how this goes. And then we'll come back and add them back. Okay. So, hello, everybody. We want to try this again. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I am Michelle Hayward, founder of Positive Hire, and I'm kicking off this series called, I have no idea what they did. Don't you hate when technology is not working with you, is working against you, right? So let's see if I can figure out what it is or is not doing. This is frustrating. Um, but at least I have this going in multiple places. It says pre-live. Um, Click to join. There's nothing there. So I don't know if it's StreamYard or if it's someplace else. Mm, yeah, I know it's already live, but we aren't showing up as live. Okay, so I'm gonna roll with it, rock with it, and I'll just have to share it over to LinkedIn or do it again over on LinkedIn. So everybody, thank you so much for hanging in there while I figure out or try to figure out what LinkedIn did. Uh, so I'll just have people go over to YouTube. So hey, so since LinkedIn don't like me, everybody can go over to YouTube. If you're already on YouTube checking this out, thank you so much for joining me. We are going to have a fantastic time tonight. So, Built by Women is a series of live streams where we're going to be sharing and introducing to many of you Black, Latina, and Indigenous women or multiracial women who work in the US infrastructure. And I thought I would kick off this series with myself, introducing myself. A lot of people know me either in the civil engineering space or when I did construction, or they know me from college. Hey, hey, Clemson Tigers. They may also know me just from Positive Hire and what I've been building for the last 5-6 years with my tech startup. And I wanted to spend time tonight really sharing with all of you more about what I do and how I got into engineering and construction. And I tell people I blame it on my mother, right? Just like, you blame being an engineer on your mother? Yeah, I do. So I was really good at math and science. So back in the 1900s, as the young people say, I ended up going to a lot of summer camps. And one particular was at the University of South Carolina Partners for Minority in Engineering and Computer Science. And I did that summer program for 4 years in a row. And they really focused on showing students from Black and other marginalized communities what engineering was and what computer science was. In the early 90s to mid 90s, then I also did a summer at South Carolina State through South Carolina State University through South Carolina Governor's School, a project that was around a highway going through wetlands. So it was a civil engineering project, and I did that one summer, and that project actually won me a scholarship through Partners for Minorities in Engineering and Computer Science. So that's a whole thing, right? I get my scholarship, yeah, but my mother always put me in these summer camps, made sure I'm one of 5 kids that I always, since I did so well in math and science on standardized tests and in school, that I looked at engineering as an option. Well, pre the 90s or 1989 was really a devastating year here in the state of South Carolina. We were hit by a Category 5 hurricane. And during that time, what happened was the hurricane literally decimated the coast of South Carolina, actually coming in to the winds coming in and weather coming into the county neighboring mine. Now, I live an hour and 15 minutes from Charleston, North Charleston area. So if you're familiar, you kind of know. But that's how far inland it came, about 70 miles or so. And so for me, it was like, oh, wow, we were battering down, trying to prep for a hurricane. People like, why don't you leave? We Southern, we forward tough, I guess. But it's just culturally, you just prepare for it. Well, it's the worst hurricane we've seen in literally generations of people. And my mom's youngest sister and her family lived about 25, 30 minutes from Charleston. They were in a newer brick home, and they stayed. They thought, they're in a good spot. They weren't on the coast. They were close, but also they had a newer home, and their home was destroyed during the hurricane while they were inside of their home. And so what was that when I saw pictures and looking at the news and seeing things in the newspaper, because it wasn't online, it wasn't the internet in '89, I wanted to understand how could this thing called a hurricane destroy a new brick home? Like, they're really tough and they're really hard and strong. How could it do what it did to my aunt and uncle and cousin's home, to different businesses, and bringing in boats into inland and toppling over 100-year-old trees? And I was just amazed and puzzled as to how a hurricane, because I'm thinking like strong winds, right? And a lot of rain, that a home should be able to withstand that. And what happened was, I decided, as I was going through these summer programs, that I would look at engineering. And I also looked at another engineering major when I got to college. But I was never not told to do engineering. I was never not told to do something like that, right? Some people, like, you weren't encouraged. I was highly encouraged to do these things. I was highly encouraged to participate in them. So it was important for me to really have, and I think it's important for young girls and people of color to have those people around them that are going to encourage them to really do things that may not be popular. There was a tweet that I read this morning, and it was about how many TV shows showed Black people being creative. And I sent it to a friend of mine, and we could literally count on one hand as kids how many TV shows there were of Black people in science and engineering or math, and how much science, engineering, and math negatively impacts our lives because we are different in so many ways, and our communities are generally are overlooked and ignored for the necessities we need as human beings. And so we really just thought, like, I can remember Dwayne Wayne, and if you go back to the 60s looking at Star Trek, you remember Lieutenant Uhura. And so you literally can name, like, like, okay, who else did I grow up with that was Black and that was in engineering or science? And you don't get that many from the 80s and 90s, which were primarily my childhood. And so if you know of some, definitely let me know. And so I took those experiences and that encouragement, went off to Clemson University, which was another school I did summer programs for. And one of the freshman engineering classes, have you go visit you do a tour one night to visit the different engineering buildings. And in those engineering buildings, they have students and professors who literally show you different things in their labs throughout in each of those buildings. You don't have enough time to go to all of them, so I only went to two. Well, I went to the civil engineering building, which is Lowry Hall, and they had a wind tunnel, and I remember this to this day. It was a little plexiglass house, like a little doll house, but it's made completely out of plexi dolls. So just so you understand scale. And what they did was they had this huge fan, like literally, probably I'm 5'1", so it's probably about 5 feet tall, 5 foot in diameter because it's circular. And they had Pepto-Bismol. So they turned on the fan so we could see how at different speeds, how the plexiglass house would shift. They poured the Pepto so we could see the Pepto move around the house, so you could understand how the wind really looked as it was hitting the corners of the house. And it was in that moment that I knew I was going to be a civil engineer. I wasn't absolutely sure, but from that demonstration, I knew right then and there that I was going to be a civil engineer, without a doubt. I knew that's what I was going to do. And so what I did was I confirmed my major, and we had a general engineering professor. So when you came into Clemson at that time, I don't know what they're doing now, you didn't go straight into your engineering major. All freshmen came in as a general engineering major, and you got an advisor. And what that advisor would do was try to figure out how best to help you. And when I told him I was going into civil, he's like, that's great. I was a civil engineer. It's a great major. He gave me some pointers like, hey, don't take this statistics class over in the math department, go to the experimental statistics department. Like, he was so happy I was going into civil. Dr. Josie, if anybody from Clemson remembers him. And that's off I went to civil. Was it easy? No. It was the best decision for me, especially at the time. And so when I was going through the program, I just knew I was going to do structural design. Lord, I hated structural design classes. To knowing that I was going to be sitting down at a desk doing, to me, homework all day did not excite me at all. It really made me want to focus on doing something else, on really challenging myself to go elsewhere. And I literally had to figure out what did that look like for me? What did that look like for me to go into that major, do well, keep my scholarships because I had scholarships, but also to really focus on getting some other things done. what I mean by that, I want to have fun in college, but also I wanted to intern as well. So what that mean for me? Um, that meant focusing on my grades and doing some other things. So co-op, not in construction, intern, not in construction. Right. So how did I really end up in construction as a whole story? So I'm gonna tell y'all about it. Um, so I'm actually not first generation construction. I'm not second generation construction. I'm at least third generation construction, which surprises a lot of people. They don't realize that I'm at least third generation. So my maternal grandfather had his own construction company here in South Carolina. Um, and so when I told my mom I was, left my first job after grad school, that I was going to construction, I don't think she really cared as much because she grew up with her dad running a construction company. It wasn't weird to her, different in that aspect. And my father worked in construction, and my mom's three brothers all worked in construction. And so I was probably the first woman, at least in my mom's family, to work in construction. But I wasn't the only one to be in construction at the time. So what I will say is not impossible, but it definitely was different. And how I got into construction is really, really so I always tell people what they don't tell you when you run your own business. Like, I'm gonna run my own, but you're doing nothing but sales and marketing all day. Marketing and sales, sales and marketing, marketing and sales all day. And so what I ended up doing was having somebody um literally literally why did I had somebody who believed in me, right? And so I left grad school. I had gotten a job doing technical sales. So as a business owner, you do sales all day. I hated that job. And to find out now, because I was an inside sales engineer, it's an easy job. If you're on the sales side, it's an easy job because you're just doing inbound. You just wait for somebody to call you to provide them with information, to close a deal, to, configure some products, physical products is what I sold, not software at the time, to that particular person. And what I didn't understand, which I appreciate now, is that job and the things that I learned, and wishing that I paid more attention to them. But it is what it is at this point. But I will say that it helped me realize I did not want to do technical sales. I did not want to be tied to a phone all day, and have the traditional office job. And so I remember being at the National Society of Black Engineers National Convention in 2006. I want to say it was in Pittsburgh. Yeah, it was in Pittsburgh. And I ran into one of my classmates from Clemson who was working for this company. And she was like, "You should come work here. I think you'll like it." And it ended up getting hired there. And I stayed there for 12 years. Um, So I've worked in fossil fuel, so retrofit to a fossil fuel plant outside of Pittsburgh. And then I spent the rest of my career, 2/3 of my career, in transmission distribution, traveling to out in the middle of no place. A good thing I grew up in rural South Carolina, building high voltage transmission lines. It was very lonely at times. It is very scary at times, but it was definitely something that I found that I enjoyed doing. And when that ended for me, I opted really not to go back. Really opted to focus on changing the culture of engineering construction industry. And that's what we focus on here in Positive Hire, is really how do we make it culturally better for women and people of color. So here I am years later, doing something that many would say is not construction related. A lot of the things I learned in construction, I got from I actually got from being in construction. The way I do my operations in my company, build teams, look for skill set, oftentimes are somewhat related to what I saw and learned in construction, whether it's a small project, how you delegate work, how do you track work, how do you build milestones for accomplishment, for projects or things that we're working on. We do sprints. And so it's really interesting how a lot of the methodologies that you may see over in tech really come out of engineering and construction and other places. And over in tech, they just paint it purple and they say, oh, look, we innovated. Yeah, okay, but not really. And so you really, really being able to take that skill set. But those years that I was out on, in construction, I was away from home. So it was there 25 days, 30 days in a month. I was on the road 25 of those days. I was home for 5 days a month. And my youngest nephew, who is now 14, of course, he hadn't been born when I first started in the industry. He was about, I guess, he was about 5 or 6 years old. This was around 2014. Yeah, 2014. So he would have been 5, I think. And my math, yeah, I'm mathing right. And so he would get very sad when I would leave. He would wake up. I would stay at my sister's house because she lived closer to the airport. Instead of driving an hour to catch a 6:30, 5:30 a.m. flight, I like, look, let me save an hour and sleep here. And so he would see me the night before. We have fun. He'd wake up the next morning and I'd be gone. And my sister be taking him to school, him and his sister, and he'd be like, well, why does she have to go? Why can't she stay here? And he would start to cry. And so I remember when the Spider-Man movie was out in 2014, it had Jamie Foxx in it. And I can't remember right now. I think it's Electro was Jamie Foxx's character's name. And the character was an electrical engineer that worked on the power grid. So Jamie Foxx being a Black man, my older brother actually is an electrical engineer, and he works for a power company. So I was able to tell my nephew this. In the Spider-Man movie, you know how Jamie Foxx works on a power grid, whatever the character's name was before it became Electro. He was like, yeah. I said, well, Aunt Shell has to build the power grid for Uncle to be able to operate it. That's what I do. I said, but I can't do that from here. I have to go far, far away. And he kind of understood just from a movie, right, what the power grid was and what an electrical engineer was, and making it more believable because I was an engineer, my brother's an engineer, and he saw a Black man that he's growing up to be as an engineer in a movie. And so representation is so important, but also being able to tie that in was so, so very powerful for him. So many of you didn't know I worked on power grid projects. You may see, in a picture with my high visibility shirt on and holding a hard hat that, okay, so construction, obviously, but what did I do? Literally the big metal poles with the power lines on them, all out in the middle of nowhere, up on a hill. Yeah, that's the kind of work I did. It was very isolating and it can be very, very stressful. Some people said, oh my God, you must be fearless. And I told them no. In all honesty, it is one of the most stressful. I did it scared, literally. And I tell people this all the time. If you want to do something, do it scared. No matter what, just do it and do it scared, because that really is going to be the better. You're hardly ever going to be without fear about anything, right? For those parents out there, you're like, oh my God, I had my kids, it's so much fun, but then they went to daycare. then elementary, middle school, high school, college, like parents know they've done everything they can, but they still have that a slight bit of fear. And so you'll have the same. I've had the same thing where I just did it scared, but I had to do it. And I think it's really important to talk about that because oftentimes, like you see some strong and feels like, no, I was just scared and carried a big stick or sounded confidently in what I knew. Because what I knew, I knew. And what I didn't, I'm like, you know what? Let's discuss that. Or let me do research on that and get back to you. And so it's really important for you to know it's okay to be scared and to share it with other people. Just do it scared because otherwise you may do it at all. Most times people regret the things they did not do opposed to the things they did. People regret the things they did not do opposed to the things they did when it really comes down to living the life that they want. So think about the things you wanted to do. And maybe you don't have the same mobility, it won't be at the same level you dream of. But sometimes you can get to do some of the things you want to do, just maybe not at the scale you wanted to do them. And I'll just wrap up in saying this much about being an engineer, being in construction. I enjoyed it for the most part. Met some amazing people, went to some places y'all never ever want to know about. I might have put my truck in park because there was some cattle in front of me on this private ranch. I have seen people propel down from a windmill, on a wind farm on my way to check on crews. I've managed construction crews. I have project managed stuff. I've worked with clients. I've worked with other utility companies in conjunction with helping manage my clients' construction projects for transmission lines. Slept in most times some really good hotels and motels, but you never really know. You never really know. But it was really an opportunity to do something different. And I would say if you can, do it. And some people like, I gotta wait till the kids grow up, then wait for the kids to grow up and then go do it anyway. Like that last one, 18, like deuces, I'm out. And I had this one coworker, Bob. No, really, his name's Bob. And Bob talked about how when his youngest daughter, his daughter, who's the youngest rather, went off to college, he took an international assignment and him and his wife left the country and literally went abroad and traveled to do construction projects. And their daughter, who was in college, managed their finances. It was wild. So they're in their 50s, traveling around, 40s, 50s, traveling different countries doing construction projects. And the daughter be like, Dad, what did y'all spend all this money for at this IKEA? It's like, yeah, we had to buy furniture. Y'all spending too much money. So she was mad at you telling her parents they were spending too much money. And so, because this was really before online banking really kicked off, especially if accessing it internationally. And so when you think about what's going to happen when your kids are grown, literally there are people that are doing things differently, doing things that they don't see their friends and family around them doing. And so truly figure out what that is and go do it. You don't always have to do it the way other people have. You can absolutely do it your way. So everybody, I'm gonna get out of here. I hope you have a great week and we will be back next time with another Built by Women, Afro-Latina in infrastructure, Dominican. So we can't wait to have you join us. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye.